Welcome to the Kicks Factory. I am your host, Omar Bailey, footwear design, entrepreneur, and creator. But this show isn't about me. This show was created to tell you stories of those who are doing extraordinary things in the sneaker game. We're also here to celebrate and discuss footwear design and creation with the creators themselves. All right. So I got to introduce this brother. And I say brother because I really did and still do look up to this dude as an older brother. Give you a little history on our backgrounds, or the background. I met this dude in 2001, my first year of college. First person that I met, rolling up on campus with my Jamaican parents that with their broken English, trying to figure out where the dorm room was. And this brother just rolls up to us and is just couldn't be any nicer, and was just it was just amazing to see. And as I continued to get to know this guy and really understand like what his understand his purpose and his mission, and just him as a human being, it really gave me the confidence, and also just let me know that I was in the right place and that I made the right decision and I was moving towards this footwear goal. This brother, man, has done everything from, working with Michael Jordan, the GOAT, Lil Wayne, Eminem's, worked on all kinds of shoes that you've heard of and seen and may or may not know that he's worked on. Man, without any further ado, I would like to introduce my friend, my brother, amigo, Jason Mayden. Welcome to the Kicks Factory, my brother. Welcome.
Thank you, man. It means the world to me to see your face at a time such as this, where not being able to be physically present. I'm thankful that we had the technology to connect, man, and just share a moment together, man, where we tell stories that hopefully inspire and encourage people who are trying to do what we do for a living.
That's right. Likewise, man. No, I appreciate that. One thing I wanted to say too, that I remember when we first met, and on that fall day in Detroit, Michigan. It was such a heavy week. I was reflecting on this before our call, and I think that was the same week that Aaliyah had passed away, if I remember correctly. I remember hearing about it on the way up to Michigan, and it was just such an emotional weekend or week where I'm starting this journey, and then someone as iconic as Aaliyah, who to many people was sort of their shining star to some capacity, and her passing. So it was such a crazy week, for that to happen, and then to start this journey, and to meet you. But I just wanted to put that out there. But anyway, how you doing, man? How's everything going? I wish we could be doing this in person, but due to the circumstances we're currently in, we got to do this. Electronically. But so much is going on in the world right now with COVID-19, Black Lives Matter. I mean, it's just a crazy, crazy time. How are you doing? How's your family doing? How are you?
Yeah, man. We maintain and joy, man. For me, I tend to think and believe that if you're in this country and you're a person of color, particularly Black people, we're genetically predisposed to being, to have endurance during times of uncertainty.
Mm,
Some of our greatest innovations, some of our greatest accomplishments have come while the world around us has been falling apart. So the way I've been working with my family and talking is through this very simple perspective. Things aren't falling apart; they're falling into place.
mm,
And it's incumbent upon us to keep that mindset, because there's gonna be people who leverage this moment to create generational change. And
That's
it's just
right.
going to have to be through the lens of strategic sacrifice and fearlessness. And fearlessness doesn't mean you walk around brolic and just starting conflict. What it means is that you're willing to face ambiguity and uncertainty with confidence, knowing that it's not about you anymore. It's about the legacy that we leave behind. So, losing Chadwick Boseman, the story of Aaliyah, and crazy enough, Aaliyah had ties to CCS, man. She's from that area. She's from the
That's
D.
right. That's right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was pretty heavy on campus, and losing a lot of my friends in the game along the way, it's just solidified my urgency to live a life of purpose and meaning. And it's two words that I use in my household that I live by, and it's honor and gratitude. Honor my ancestors, and then also show gratitude for the people who've come before me, who've paved the way. And so I think that's what this moment is really revealing in all of us. Uncertainty doesn't change you; it just reveals who you truly are at your core. You
That's
know,
right.
so that's the thing. If you're a person who's fickle, this moment exposes how fickle you are. If you're a person who's brave and wants to push forward, this moment exposes that. So I think for all of us, we're having to face the mirror and see what we're really comprised of, and either we're going to accept it or we're going to change it. But for me, I run straight towards ambiguity because I really want to live a life of purpose.
Mm. No, well said. Well said. And I have nothing else to add to that. That was perfect. I want to start from the beginning with you. You're from Chicago, and I grew up in Florida, and you would always hear the stories, just these crazy stories about Chicago and murder capital of the world and this and that happening. What from your like I would just love to hear from you. Like what was that? What was it like for you growing up in Chicago? What was your you tell us a little bit about your family and just what it was like in that time for you.
Yeah, I think what's critically important from a historical context is to understand how Chicago was constructed to begin with. So, a fun
Mm,
fact about the city is that it's one of the only major cities in the United States that were founded by a black man. It was founded by a Haitian immigrant, Jean Baptiste Toussaint. So, the
mm,
fact that our city's origins are rooted in entrepreneurship, are rooted in first generation work ethic, and are rooted in creativity and barter, I think you can see why we have a different level of hustle. Everybody who's from Chicago, truly from the South Side and West Side, North Side has a different energy to it, but South Side, West Side is very similar in the sense that a lot of us came from the South during the Great Migration. There's a great book
mm-hmm,
called Warmth of Other Suns that talks about how we went from the South to the North to look for opportunities. You think about what happened in Nazi Germany and the fact that the Bauhaus moved to Chicago and
mm,
set up shop in IIT. Think about Frank Lloyd Wright. You think about Yamaguchi. You think about
mm,
Calatrava. You think about all these design heroes who literally made Chicago an open air architectural design museum. And then you compound that by having people like Oprah, people like,
yep,
Harold Washington, the first black mayor of Chicago, people like Benji, who, and for all intents and purposes, Ben Wilson would have been the Michael Jordan. He would have been the
yeah,
Derrick Rose. He was that good.
mm,
And then you add to that a huge amount of people who came home from the Vietnam War and were highly educated, highly tactical and strategic. Then you compound that with it being home in the Nation of Islam. Then you compound that
mm,
with a lot of the intersectionality between first generation people from Eastern Europe. Chicago for me was the greatest, I would say, primary school experience I ever could have had to be prepared for life.
wow,
Walking down the street in Stony Island, which is a pretty prominent street on the south side, you'll see the brothers who were part of NOI telling you the black man is a king, the black man is God. Know your worth, brother. Know who you are.
mm,
And you're getting that
wow,
fed to you as a child. And
wow,
then you're going to the Taste of Chicago and you're seeing people of color selling food and entrepreneurship. And then you're going to Lollapalooza and hearing political, musicians talk about
wow,
caring for women and marginalized communities. Chicago isn't violent. Chicago is strategically targeted because it is the birthplace of revolutionaries. And for those of us who've made it out, who have a revolutionary mindset, it's incumbent upon the forces that be to get people to feel afraid of us. Because if they truly knew our strength and our power and our resilience, people will
mm,
be looking to Chicago for leadership, not for villainization, not for criminalization, because it's the home of revolutionaries, man. And it's strategically attacked. It's the reason why it's segregated. It's a reason why they put heroin on the west side, why they put guns on the south side. It's a reason why they locked up the leaders in the community. It's a reason. And so I just
mm,
tell people, yeah, you can watch the narrative of what's happening in Chicago, but that's the equivalent of watching New Jack City and assuming that's what New York is totally like
right, right,
writ large. It's a
right,
caricature. It's like watching Narcos and think of Colombia is all Pablo Escobar when it's not the
yep,
truth. So it's a caricature, and I
yep,
and I really hope people fall in love with with the city and its history and the arts and its history in fighting for freedom and equality, not its current circumstances, which are a direct result of disenfranchisement and strategic, criminalization of a certain demographic of people.
Wow. Wow. You are listening to the Kicks Factory show, and I'm live here with Jason Mayden. Um, that's amazing. That really is. That's just so enlightening to hear that was what your experience was like growing up. And you alluded to it with, how movies are depicted and how someone can interpret, specific area being just that, what you see. And it's just great to hear that, because it is the total opposite of how I opened up this segment with what I heard in Florida as a kid growing up, and now listening to what you're saying. So with that said, it sounded like there was tons of inspiration and a lot of people to look up to. What were some of your dreams, growing up? It sounded like you had a lot of support and encouragement at that time in the area.
Yeah, man. My dreams, quite honestly, were different than other kids because I was sick at the age of 7. And so right at the height of when you get ready to cognitively transform into your adult personality, I had what's called a
Mhm,
near miss, as a term that's
mhm,
coined by Malcolm Gladwell. And a near miss is when a person is put into a situation where they either face their mortality or they're facing a dire circumstance. And either you bias towards a possible self that is an aspirational version, or you get anchored into PTSD and you start to spiral into despair.
mhm,
Thankfully, because of my circumstances and having a family that was deeply rooted in the church and deeply rooted in early childhood education and just, in the military, they taught me mental and cognitive resilience. And so
mhm,
growing up, my dream was to become a character from a comic book named Lucious Fox. It was the first time I saw a black man that was technical, that was elegant, that was eloquent, that was
mhm,
responsible for leading a P&L, that was a civil servant who wasn't about the clout chase. He just knew he had gifts and talents that were intended to help people. And I felt like that's what I was born to do, to use my gifts and talents in service of humanity. And so while he was a fictitious character, Michael Jordan was a real life person. And I said,
mhm,
somebody has to design gadgets for this hero. Why can't it be me? So I obsessed over becoming the person who designed for my hero, which was Michael Jordan. It was reinforced, that my dreams were possible because of how my parents advocated for me and told me that even though they didn't have my skill set or my interest, they believed that if I pursued this path and I pursued it with diligence, that I would become who I am today. And I'm thankful for that they didn't shoot my dreams down and tell me I was crazy.
yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. Uh, we're just gonna take a short break. You're listening to the Kicks Factory here with Jason Mayden, and when we come back, we're gonna dive a little bit into a little further into these dreams and talk about the college years. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome back.
Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Sell or Fail,
Your money has to work for you.
we want to talk about from the nitty to the gritty. Where if you ain't selling,
You failing,
if you crushing sales at any level,
Right.
you've thought about writing a book.
stay on point like a javelin and sharper than a Gibson knife.
A-type or B, sales is the great equalizer.
And if you ain't selling, you failing. Let's get this money on this podcast. If you don't sell, you do what, William?
You fail.
That's all it is to it.
That ice cream ain't gonna sell itself.
Let's make it happen.
Car sales is kind of like the foundation of sales, if you will.
Yeah. This is Sell or Fail. We'll be right back at you.
Kadzukian. Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.
Welcome back to the Kicks Factory here with Jason Mayden. So I want to pick back up where we left off in the last segment, and you talked about your family and your parents encouraging you and not calling you crazy for the types of dreams that you had. And one of the consistent questions I like to try and ask on this or squeeze into the show is do you think you found footwear design, or did footwear design find you?
I know it found me, man. I know it specifically found me.
Yeah.
Um, so my sophomore year of high school, what a lot of people don't know about me is I skipped a bunch of grades growing up. And I remember distinctly that I was headed to go and double major in mechanical and electrical engineering at Georgia Tech with the hopes of walking on and playing football. But I was younger than my classmates. I was going to sit out my senior year. Ended up having to transfer high schools in my senior year from the south side to the south suburbs because my school was becoming exceptionally violent and just, low test scores and low aspirations, and had seen a bunch of stuff that a kid shouldn't see. And when I got to that new high school, I refused to play football, so I ran track. And it was during that time period we were actually heading down Stony Island to go to a b-boy competition because I used to mess around back in the day. And I was hit by a drunk driver. And the drunk driver forced me off the road. We hit a light pole. My friend split his face open. It was a pretty scary situation, and it was in that moment where I messed my shoulder up, and I thought to myself, like, man, I may never be able to play sports again. I don't know how I'm going to get to Nike. And I thought being an engineer was my path there. Lo and behold, it was my coach and it was my high school principal they both played in the NFL. They both sat down and said, Jason, you're a masterful artist. You're a strategic thinker. Here's this article. We want you to read it. In that article, there was a kid named Chi-Wei Lee. Chi-Wei had designed what eventually became the RAV4 for Toyota. They also mentioned in this article that he was a student of CCS and he had interned at Nike. And my coaches knew I wanted to go to Nike. They said, Jason, contact Toyota, see if you can get in touch with this kid, see if you can get in touch with the school, and, figure it out. So I called Toyota on a Friday in Japan. Now, mind you, I had no clue about global time zones. So I thought it was Friday everywhere. Like I didn't realize it was Saturday. So they said, I'm just a kid from Chicago, man, trying to hustle.
That's right.
So they left a message at my high school. At that time, it was the chief design officer. He was actually visiting. He was heading to visit Pasadena. They have a facility they used to have a facility called Cal T. I don't know if it's still there, but it's part of the innovation facility. And he mentioned to me, hey, man, there are two schools, CCS and Art Center. And the major that you're looking for is called industrial design. And he shot it to me straight. He said, listen, Art Center is highly competitive. It's on the other side of the country. They don't have dorm rooms. And the average age is 25 because most people get a job, then realize they went down the wrong path. And then they go to design school. CCS is closer to you. It's 4 hours away. If you fail out, you can at least drive home to Chicago. That was his literal advice. It was direct. Exactly what you would expect from someone from Japan, just shooting it to you straight.
You get straight up. Yep.
So I put together my portfolio, which consisted of graffiti, which was primarily girls' names and bubble letters, drawings of sneakers. I'm being honest.
I did the same thing, bro. I did the same thing.
Bro, you got to get it how you live, man. Like I can draw.
I'm telling you.
And I went up to CCS, man, and gave up my academic scholarship, for Georgia Tech, and negotiated my way into industrial design with Sabrina Nelson. And I started on probation in industrial design. My portfolio wasn't good enough. I took a minor in graphic design with the explicit agreement if I failed out of ID, I'll transfer to graphics. And that's kind of how it found me, man, was through my coaches helping me to identify that to get to be an industrial designer is the path towards designing footwear. I thought it was engineering until that car accident.
Wow. That's a great story. You're here on the Kicks Factory show. We're here with Jason Mayden. Real quick shout out to Sabrina Nelson. What's up? What up, though? So you like that? Got that in there. So let's talk about that. Talk about your college experience a little bit. I know there was ups and downs. Let's start at the just kind of what do you remember most from your college experience at CCS?
Yeah. To set the context for this, because I need people to understand, this was 1998. This was at a time period where Black entrepreneurship and Black creativity was regarded as second class to European creativity and European entrepreneurship. It was the rise of people like Mark Newsom, Johnny Ives. It was the rise of the British accent being dominant in product design. And there was no one that looked like me that was product design. Most of the people who looked like me were pushed into transportation design because it needed to fill a quota or fill some type of initiative to have diversity in automotive. Right. But I was a fan of product. And product was not something that was heavily supported. They regarded it as people who failed out of trans versus people who truly wanted to be product designers. So when I got there and I started out telling people I want to do shoes, that's my mission while I'm here, I was laughed at. It wasn't a lot of people who supported me. It wasn't a lot of people outside of Steve Schock, Tom Roney, and a couple other key people on the administrative side, like Cliff Harris and Bart,
Mhm.
that really were like, yo, if you want to do that, it's possible. It's going to be hard, but it's definitely possible. So some of the upperclassmen who had interned at Reebok, had interned at Nike, they thought like, yeah, you could do it, man, but you're not going to have a long career because very few people get to Nike. And do you really want to draw side views for the rest of your life? That was the big thing, is cars, you draw perspective. They said shoes, you draw lateral and medial. And I'm like, that just seems easier. It seems funner. And my shoes come out faster than the car does. So it was a logical decision, like doubling down on footwear. While I was there, I competed. I took a lot of opportunities away from transportation students because I'm an athlete first. My freshman year, I sucked. I wasn't the worst. I wasn't the best. And to set the context, about 70% of people, and you know this, Omar, after freshman year, they thin the herd. Like 7 out of 10 students drop out.
That's right.
And so it's you start with 200, you graduate with 30 people. It's that competitive. So I had all the toughest teachers. Thankfully, because of my work ethic, I survived. And then between freshman and sophomore year, I treated it like a sport. I did 1,000 sketches a day. I went and learned everything I could about art history, something that wasn't taught in public school education in Chicago. I learned about all the movements of design that had happened prior to me finding design. And then I came back sophomore year with new weapons to destroy my competition. And that's how I thought about it. Like, nobody's going to outwork me. I don't care if your daddy worked at Ford, Chrysler, whatever. You meet me on the court or the field, then hunger is going to beat passion. Like, my hunger is going to outwork your privilege. And that's because I didn't have money. I didn't have contacts, but I had work ethic. So I competed. I won competitions. I did everything I could to volunteer and serve, and finally got my internship my junior year. And that's when people realized, like, this is serious. He really is going after this. And what was a blessing is I had the tremendous honor and privilege to design a shoe that went to production. Then I returned back to school and was still an employee of Nike, working on additional Air Jordans, which is where I met a lot of y'all, So it was really Steve Shock who put his job on the line for me and allowed me to do a independent study my senior year that allowed me to become who I am today. Had he not stood up for me and allowed me to do that, the school, not all of the people, but some of the people at the school were quite upset that I didn't pursue transportation design, because optically it looked better to have the most talented student who was Black be in transportation design, because that was where they got a big amount of their endowment at that moment. But some of the professors, man, and which is why I go hard in the paint for CCS, they stood up and they said, let him be him. This is who he is. And thank God, man, they did, because I don't know where I would be if they didn't advocate for me in the way that they did.
Wow. That's wow. That's all I got to say about that. You're here on the Kicks Factory podcast live with Jason Mayden. You just said something that was really interesting. My effort is going to outwork your privilege. That's beautiful. And I feel like, as you're talking and I'm thinking about that moment, in 2001, 2002, when you were working on these on these Jordan projects, like I remember like seeing that work ethic and that and that rubbing off on me and Jonathan and Dwayne and Drew and the rest of us that were there. You really, set the tone for us, because I feel like we just kind of took that and ran with it as well. But to go back to that moment when working on the Jordan 17, that was, for me, like, and I get a little emotional thinking about it, because I remember just being so wondering if I made the right choice to come to Detroit. And I remember being in your dorm room and seeing you working on this shoe. I remember the silver metallic briefcase with the shoe sample in it. And I just remember being, I'm an 18-year-old Black kid from South Florida, and I'm sitting here and I'm staring at this shoe that like Michael Jordan is going to be wearing like at some point in the very near future. I was just blown away, by that. And I just remember being so impressed, just with you and the work that you were doing. It just really just made me so happy to see that and to see you doing this, just doing so amazingly, and really gave you something to work towards. Like, I want to be like Jason. I want to be like Jason. What do you remember most from that project? Just that 17, such an iconic shoe, probably one of the last shoes that MJ wore before his career wrapped up. And you had the honor to work on that. What was that like, being from Chicago? I'm sure there was a moment of feeling sort of everything coming full circle for you. Tell me a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, man. In that moment, to be honest with you, I was halfway in the streets, halfway in corporate America. And I'm just being transparent because people may listen to my story and think I grew up and had it sweet. I didn't have a horrible life experience, but I definitely didn't have a lot of advantages that my peers had. So to be quite honest, man, every time I would sit down and work on that project, my main thought was, if I die today, will people know I worked on this shoe? Because I had to go home to the South Side. I wasn't, I wasn't going home to Grosse Pointe, and I knew that when I graduated, I had to go immediately to Oregon because I couldn't hang around my city in the summer. So that was really what was going through my mind. Like, I need to graduate. And I waited till June 4th. My mother's birthday was June 3rd. We had a barbecue and I flew to Nike on June 4th. I didn't even come home that summer because I was so afraid of being the kid who almost made it, being like Benji, almost making it to the league and being killed or something happening. And I remember Wilson Smith, who is born, funny enough, a day before me, years apart, but just we celebrated birthday a couple days apart.
Mm-hmm.
And Wilson and Kerbis were the two people who would call me and check on me. Dwayne Edwards would call and check on me. And they were like, man, we so proud of you. Keep going. How's it going? Can we help you? And to know that these legends in the game, and shout out to Wilson Smith, he's the first black man in this game. It wouldn't be no me if it wasn't Wilson. Wilson is the Benjamin Banneker of this industry. Shout out to Tinker, but Wilson needs more credit than he gets because a lot of Tinker stuff is Wilson stuff. And I
Absolutely.
and we need to acknowledge that. I felt honored, man, because I felt almost a survivor's remorse. Like, why me, man? I'm not the best. I'm not this. I'm not that. But it was when I met MJ, upon returning to campus, and we had this conversation, that really changed my life. When he told me this phrase, I referenced.
Wait. I want to hold on that because I want to save the MJ chat for the next segment. We need a little more time to dive into that. We are going to pay some bills right now. You're listening to the Kicks Factory Show. I'm here with Jason Mayden, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the GOAT.
Hello and welcome to R&R on Sports.
This is a very special day. We've got some very special young ladies joining us here. We want to hear about sports from a lady's perspective.
I'm just happy to see athletes utilizing their platforms to amplify what we do on a day-to-day basis.
We've seen, Jesse Owens, his race and the political implications. Jim Brown has been vocal. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Muhammad Ali. We can go on and on and on about athletes entering into the political and having a positive impact.
44 was a huge advocate for sport. So we'll see.
I don't think Biden's gonna be shooting ball in the track, dog.
No, he strikes me as the golf type.
Kadzukian. Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.
This is the Kicks Factory Show. I am here with Jason Mayden. So circling back to our last conversation, or what you just brought up, and actually even before we jump into MJ, quick question I want to ask you is your, one thing, I wanted to ask was, do you remember if you had, in sports, you always have like in NFL, they always say, a rookie has his welcome to the NFL moment. What was your aha moment and your moment when you realized that I can do this?
Oh, man. What was crazy? Nobody's ever asked me that question, and I don't think I've ever told this story publicly. So I had a chance to present to Phil Knight at the end of my internship, and it was not because they had, allowed for it to happen. It's because I just kind of just like, look, I don't know if I ever see this man again in my life. He gonna get this story. He gonna hear what I gotta say. I put a lot of money into this company. He gonna hear what I gotta say. Feel me? Like, nah, man, he gonna get this. He gonna get this design. So I was able to build a relationship with his admins, and shout out to all the admins. They're the unsung heroes of corporate America. They make things work. They keep the trains on track, and they've been my greatest support system, admins and janitors. They're there when nobody else is working, and they support the people who are trying to grind. So I built a relationship with Mr. Knight's admin. I won't say her name so people don't flood her LinkedIn or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was like, look, I need 15 minutes. I just need 15 minutes. Please, 15 minutes. I just want to show him what I'm working on. So I got a 15-minute meeting with Mr. Knight, and I present to him. I tell him the story of the AJ17 Mule, how it's a post-game recovery shoe. Most athletes don't like taking their socks off because their toes are damaged, but they also want to be able to wear something that looks in line with basketball culture. So it's for the corporate athlete on casual Fridays who wants to just wear something clean with their slacks, but it's also a post-game for competitive athletes that want to carry the essence into Jordan as they get back on the bus on a road game or playing us, what have you. So I go through the whole story. I put out the timeline, and then I show the design and I show the sample at the end of my internship. And he's looking at the stuff, and he's looking. And I think I messed up. I'm like, oh my God, man, I'm gonna get fired. He's like, you did this. I was like, yeah. He's like, you're the kid who also did the airbag thing, right? And I'm like, yeah, because I took an airbag accelerometer from an airbag for a project we work on CCS, and I attached it to a snowboard boot, and I hacked together this really crude MP3 player algorithm where it had a predictive playlist where it picked accelerations and decelerations. And he was like, so what is it you can't do? Because you've drawn this Jordan and you've hacked our MP3 player and wrote a new algorithm. Like, how, are you coming back? And I was in his office shocked, like, I'm like, yeah, I'm coming. Yeah, I had no job offer, nothing, bro. It was that confirmation that he saw value in my ideas. He saw value in me being this weird kid that loved technology just as much as I love street culture, and he let me be me. And that was the permission I needed to continue moving forward.
Wow, that's a great story as well. Just keep hitting us with the gems. You're listening to the Kicks Factory show. I'm here with Jason. I'm Omar Bailey, and here with Jason Mayden. They got me all messed up right now. Just all these great stories. So, all right. So going back to the GOAT, MJ. I mean, everyone in the world know who he is. You're from Chicago. Things come full circle. You get to work on this shoe. You were telling us a little bit about a conversation or some advice that he gave you. Please, the floor is yours. I have to know what it was that he shared with you.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's funny enough. I met him accidentally coming off the elevator. I met Larry Miller at the same time. I literally bumped into him as I was trying to find my desk after intern orientation. And so during that time period, the advice was simple. He was like, just don't F up. He's like, don't mess up, right? Like it was funny because I thought like, man, is MJ threatening me? What's going on? But then we had the good fortune of circling back and having him come out towards the end of the end of my internship to unveil kind of the pre-unveil for the 17. It was still in progress, but they kind of wanted to set the mood for the sales organization. So we sat down and talked, and I remember at that point he had done his research. He like, yo, you grew up in Roseland. Your family's from the hundreds. I didn't realize that my parents went to high school with his ex-wife. So that was a wild thing to me. He knew my neighborhood. But he told me something that he said quite often. But he told it directly to me. He said, Jason, I can accept failure, but I can't accept not trying. Whatever you do while you're here, try. Try your best. Every single time you step foot on this floor, try. Because there are a lot of kids where you come from who will never get the chance to even try. And I carry that with me to this day. Like, I don't care about failure. I care about failing to try versus trying and failing. And so I put my heart and soul into everything because I know that if I'm willing to do something that's difficult, if I'm willing to do something that's uncomfortable, it makes it possible and permissible for other people to pursue their dreams. So that's my promise back to MJ, is to always try. And his promise to me and Mr. Knight's promise is, it came to fruition by them both sending me to grad school at Stanford. That combo with Phil and that combo with Mike resulted in them changing my life by paying for me to go and get my degree from the business school at Stanford. And that changed my life forever.
Man, that's incredible. Unbelievable. You're here on the Kicks Factory podcast. I'm Omar Bailey and live with Jason Mayden. Sticking on the subject of the shoe, and I want to just tap into the creation process of it a bit more. if you don't mind. What
Mhm.
were there any milestone moments at all, or any maybe difficult moments that you can think of through the creation process in that shoe and bringing it to life? I remember always hearing rumors about how many samples that Brand Jordan would have to create in order to get the final shoe right, and they would do whatever it took to get it done. So I'm just curious if there's any gems or any insight you could give us to, a difficult moment or a milestone moment for you when developing and creating this shoe.
Yeah, so I think, the process of innovation requires experimentation and iteration. So it was no extreme amounts of sampling, but it was what you would expect for something that's the sharpest tip of the spear for innovation offense.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you what was difficult is, see, I don't see MJ as an athlete. I see him as a businessman who happened to be athletic. And that
Mm,
man's business acumen and his ability to recall facts and his ability to connect, disparate points and find an intersection is unparalleled. So
mm,
for me, in my meetings with him during that time period, being a young creative, people would tell me, yo, you got to come with your facts with MJ because he's a smart dude. And I'm thinking,
mm,
okay, yeah, he's smart, but what do you mean by come with facts? And then I saw someone get chewed up in a meeting and he knew the numbers better than that person who was responsible for the numbers. And I'm like, oh, that's what they mean. Like this
mm,
man, everything he does, he wants to be well versed. He wants to be excellent. So I can't come in here and just play a game and try to finesse him. I have to be
wow,
sharp and articulate and well thought out. And because I was raised by a military man, I don't mind being strategic. I don't mind being tactical. I don't mind having a linear narrative that takes people from A to Z. So in my first set of presentations with him, I would overemphasize the fact that I was bringing him new knowledge, and I would position myself as not a person that's trying to tell you like, "Hey, this is what's cool, what's hot." I'm like, "No, let me introduce you to a topic that you didn't know about," and he would geek out and go back and research it, so the next time he can come to the conversation and be informed. And so
wow,
that's what was so dope is MJ has an analytical mind. People don't realize that he studied geography and astronomy. Is it astronomy? Yeah,
wow.
astronomy. And so he's a very, very analytical thinker, and he's a nerd. He's a science nerd. And so I just was my nerd self, and I would nerd out with him and bring him cool things to understand and learn from. And he loved that. And so his nickname for me was Young Buck. He like, Young Buck got a lot of energy. What you working on, Young Buck? I know you're doing something crazy. What you working on? So I would just pull out crazy stuff and show him. So it was cool to see that he challenged us intellectually, and he viewed us as being part of the starting five. So imagine if you grow up and you were able to be in a huddle with Michael Jordan and
Yeah.
feel like you on the court. Like I got a chance to feel like I was in a huddle with him, like I was a Rodman or a Pippen, but in
Yeah.
my area, my industry, and it was a blessing, man. I was the rookie of the team, so probably more like the BJ Armstrong of the team at that moment. But it was awesome, man.
That's so cool. That is so cool to hear. You're listening to the Kicks Factory podcast. I'm here with Jason Mayden. Um, just some of the insight you shared with some of those meetings, someone who's removed from the industry or has nothing to do with, doesn't work in this space at all would just assume that, oh, Michael Jordan just plays basketball and they send him the shoes and he wears the shoes. You literally just gave us insight that he was extremely involved throughout the process, down to forget about just the aesthetic component of it or the design of it, but the business aspect of it and down to the numbers. Did that surprise you at all when you first experienced that? Like, how'd that make you feel? And did you respect him even more for seeing the way that he handles himself in those moments?
Oh man, it gave me tremendous confidence and reinforcement to be unapologetically black and unapologetically intelligent. Because those
Mm,
two concepts weren't necessarily both aligned at that time period. The idea of the black endorser was to just hold up a product and look cool and play some hip hop behind it. But
right.
to sit in the room and to have a black man that was articulate, that was global, that was thoughtful, that was, meticulous in how he examined every single thing we did, from the business to the programs that we pushed to the product, it made me feel more comfortable on my skin of being a person that's also, really deeply in love with education and articulation of my points of views and thoughtfulness, and rhetoric and critical discourse. So that was the first time that I felt that I could be, a blurred, be a black nerd and not have to feel, different. Because my whole life I felt different. I felt like I was part of Xavier's Exceptional School for Children, like I was a mutant. And I have learning differences that I don't talk about often, but I'm on the spectrum, and I've used that as something that's a gift, not as a crutch or an excuse. I was sick when I was 7 and almost died. So I've been through so much. Being smart, being mixed, and being small and sick, that wasn't a good combo. So
Right.
I used to hide my intelligence because I knew how to fight, and I would fit in through disrupting the status quo by fighting and getting in trouble. But the whole time, I'm a straight A student.
Right.
Mike made it okay for me to be openly smart and be from the inner city and be who I am because I saw him do it. Like, people don't realize that Mike is black. Like, he's ultra black in his sensibilities and how he speaks and how he.
Mm.
This man is not. He doesn't code switch, and that's what I took away from that. And I'm so thankful I got to see that up close.
Man, that's awesome, and thank you so much for sharing that. That's just really insightful for just for me personally, and hopefully for those who are listening to this show. We're gonna take a short break, pay some bills, come back, and when we come back with Jason Mayden, we're gonna talk a little bit about his legacy. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome back.
Welcome back to another episode of Sell or Fail.
Your money has to work for you.
We want to talk about from the nitty to the gritty. Where if you ain't selling,
You failing.
if you crushing sales at any level,
Right.
you've thought about writing a book.
Stay on point like a javelin and sharper than a Gibson's knife.
A type or B, sales is the great equalizer.
And if you ain't selling, you failing. Let's get this money. On this podcast, if you don't sell, you do what, William?
You fail.
That's all it is to it.
That ice cream ain't gonna sell itself.
Let's make it happen.
Car sales is kind of like the foundation of sales, if you will.
Yeah. This is Sell or Fail. We'll be right back at you.
Kadzukian. Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.
And we're back on the Kicks Factory show with Jason Mayden. Man, this conversation has just been so enlightening, informative, educational, whatever word I can come up with. It's been a real honor to just be in your presence digitally, if you will. I want to jump into talking about some of the other projects that you've worked on in your throughout your career and this legacy that you're creating and leaving behind. So I wanted to just touch on the Nike Go Domes, the Monarchs, the original dad shoe. What those are. I mean, those are two big shoes that I remember as well. Go Domes specifically being in New York City. I saw everyone from the FedEx guy to UPS guy, wearing them running up and down Fifth Avenue and delivering boxes in the fashion district. Talk a little bit about those projects and what those shoes mean to you.
Man, what's wild is at the time that I was doing a lot of this stuff with my friends and colleagues, it was a physical manifestation of how we felt about ourselves. Like, shoes were the culmination of all of our pain, aspirations, hopes, and dreams. And if I could, clothe someone with an object or an artifact that contained the energy of aspiration and strategic intent, then it was a blessing. So everything from the work I did with Eminem to being the first person to work with Dornbecker and Jordan Brand, which was, my connection to the hospitals because I was a hospital kid, to, helping to even, matchmake Mick Boogie, at that time it was Mick Boogie, now it's DJ Mick, to doing, playlists for EA, for NBA Live, and then helping to scan shoes to put inside of video games. Like, those things for me, I didn't look at it as us creating a culture. It was just us doing what we loved. It was just me playing creatively and intellectually. But looking back, man, what I realized is that because I didn't have the fear and I'd already experienced enough loss and failure and grief, I was kind of, unlimited in my desire to just do what I felt, I could control in a moment. And it made it possible for a lot of young people, whether it be internships, jobs, opportunities, to come into this industry and be themselves, to tell stories, to connect comic books to video games to sneakers. When I was doing it, it wasn't common. It was athletes for athletes. And when you pull inspiration, now people think about all these industries. In early 2000s, it was, no, we need to know, do you want to win an Olympic gold medal, and how do you want to do it? And the inspiration kind of came, after the fact. So, man, I think my legacy in this industry is just really, really, really anchored in the power of storytelling, in the power of, youth as the catalyst for businesses, and also in the power of, intersectionality between two disparate fields of thought that don't necessarily always interact. Because who would have thought me being friends with this DJ and connecting them to homies that work at EA will result in companies like 2K creating specific music for the video game and dropping new music in the game versus on the radio. Like, that was unheard of back then. And so I just feel thankful, man. I feel also sad that the industry is so flooded and people conflate design with drawing, that for the kids who really have the desire, they're probably afraid to compete because they see all these sketches online and they think that's what they got to do to get a job. And that's not the truth.
Yep.
It's not the truth, So that's where I think the culture needs to kind of clean up its act a little bit.
You're listening to the Kicks Factory Show live here with Jason Mayden. Another question that I like to ask my guest is, as I mentioned, just alluded to shortly about, giving some advice and tips to those young designers or creatives, or just anyone in general who just wants to follow their dreams. If you could go back in time and give your younger self some advice, knowing what you know now, is there anything that comes to mind, or what kind of advice would you give yourself?
Know the difference between self-confidence and self-worth. Those are two different things.
Explain, please.
So a lot of us have imposter syndrome, where we feel achievement will somehow remove us from the societal ills that plague the Black community, the Latino community, or the marginalized community. I go to the right school, I did the right thing, I got the right job, I'm where I'm supposed to be, and please don't harm me because I'm safe, because I've accomplished so much. And that becomes a really weird relationship with achievement, because achievement shouldn't be a defense mechanism. It should be a result of your earnest attempt to do something meaningful. But for a lot of us from the inner city, when we achieve, it's a half-hearted relationship with understanding that, yes, we've done this magnificent thing, but it also can be taken from us without our consent, because someone can assume we're doing something, that they deem as threatening. And so I got a tremendous amount of confidence, but I looked at, if I do these things, if I achieve these things, maybe people might value me more and think I'm less of threatening, or I'm not the stereotype, or I'm not this. And that for a long period of time plagued me, because I couldn't really enjoy my accomplishments, because I felt like, man, if I don't keep going, then at some point somebody can come and harm me, because it's the truth, man. I deal with PTSD. I've seen way too much for a person, in life, and I know how evil people are. But once I finally accepted the fact that therapy is okay, that healing is okay, that self-help and self-healing and self-restoration is critical for me to sustain this level of success, and that talking to people and sharing my journey is okay, I fell in love with the process and not the outcome. And I think that's what I mean. Self-confidence is the ability to feel good about how you start. Self-worth is how you feel once you achieved. And if your self-worth is attached to achievement, at a certain point when you take a L, you fall apart. And I thankfully learned that before I took any L's, because a lot of people, they get a setback and they try to harm themselves. For me, I find joy in each setback, because I know I've developed a new muscle to be able to carry a new burden or carry a new load that'll help other people. And so that's what I mean, man, by having a positive relationship with self-worth versus self-confidence, because there's no sweater or hat or degree or job I can have that removes me from going outside and seeing people that look like me being harmed. None of this stuff protects me from feeling the way that I feel. So that's what I want people who are like me to understand. Doesn't matter what you do for a living, you're still worth it, regardless of your job. You're worth it. You're worth our time. You're worth acknowledgement. You're worth love and respect. None of the titles and accolades matter. You're worth it because you're here. God sent you here. You're worth it. And that's what I hope they feel, because all the stuff I've done in my career, man, it don't matter. I'm a human being with the same 24 hours as everybody else. And I just want people to know that I don't care what you do for a living. You matter to me because you're here, and you're here at the same time that I'm here. So it's important for me to show love just as much as I hope to receive love.
That's great. You're listening to the Kicks Factory show. I'm here with Jason Mayden. So you're obviously a family man now. You're a wonderful, just a beautiful example. Your family is beautiful, by the way. I remember meeting your kids when they were first like really young back in Beaverton. And it's just amazing just to see the evolution of you when I met you to where you are now. Tell me a little bit about some of the advice that you give your children, just going through the experiences and things that you've had gone through. I'm first of all, I'm sure they're very lucky to get these. I feel like I would love to get this kind of advice from you on a daily basis. But if you could give us a little insight as to just some of the gems that you share about following your dreams and never giving up. I know you've alluded to it quite a bit throughout the show, but just give I want to hear some more.
Yeah, man. So it's really one mentality that I've instilled alongside my wife. Shout out to my wife. I'm here because of her loving me into who I am today, and her seeing my true self through all my pain and hurt, and and fear and insecurity. She saw who I could be, and she never deviated from her path. So shout out to her.
Beautiful.
So my kids, I talk to them about what I call the shopping cart mentality, and it's a simple story. You go to a parking lot, you see a lot of people who don't put their shopping cart back. And I tell my kids, you don't want to be the person who does not put the shopping cart back. And they'll say, well, why? I said, because it's the easiest sign of discipline. It's the easiest sign of dedication. And if you can't do the small things well, how are you going to be responsible for the big things? So put the shopping cart back, because it's not because you're supposed to, it's because everybody else doesn't. Don't do the thing that everybody else does. Do the thing that is inconvenient, but is necessary to make sure that the small tasks are done well. Because my definition of greatness are doing the small things well consistently over time, not doing one thing well once. Anybody can hit a home run once, but can you bat 340 your entire career? Can you bat 355? Can you pull a Derek Jeter, have all the turn to? Can you do that? That's impressive. And so I tell my kids, be the person who puts the shopping cart back, because that's how you handle everything in life. And that's really the lessons I try to teach them.
Wow. I definitely learned that I need to start putting the shopping cart back myself too, as well. Tell people where they can, how can people get in touch with you, man? Where are you? What's your social?
It's straightforward, man. Nothing tricky. It's just at Jason, Jason Mayden, Mayden on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all those platforms. It's just my name. So I'm a simple dude, easy to find. I can't respond to everybody, but I try my best to show love and reach back out when people reach out to me.
Amazing. Well, that just went by too fast, and that was an amazing segment. Jason, I appreciate it. I love you, man. Like I really appreciate you as a mentor and someone that I can look up to and work towards, and really appreciate your time. Thank you for this conversation today. I appreciate it. I know the listeners are going to appreciate it. Thank you. Much appreciated, and all the best to you and your family. Stay well, stay safe. Thank you for being on.
So thank y'all, man.
So that is a wrap. This is the Kicks Factory show. I'm your host, Omar Bailey. We had on wonderful guest, Jason Mayden, and that is a wrap. Until next time, thank you and have a blessed one.
Check out all your Kadzukian favorites now. Download the Kadzukian app, available on Android and iOS.